to our webinar today about AI integration in business, 5 best practices for responsible implementation. I don't know where you're joining us from today, but if it's good morning, good morning. If it's the afternoon, good afternoon. And I don't know if it would be good night for any of you, but welcome. I'm going to kick us all off. We've got quite a few people joining us today, so we like to start on time and end on time. So I'm going to jump right in with my co-presenter, Aaron. And I'll just take 2 minutes and introduce myself to those people who don't know me. My name is Marie Wiese. I'm the president of Marketing Copilot, and I've been running Marketing Copilot for about 17 years now. And we help technology partners with their go-to-market strategy and their implementation of marketing automation and content marketing programs. I've spent about 30 years in the technology sector, and I'm currently a Microsoft MVP in AI. And I can't wait to dig into this conversation with Aaron, because I have a few more miles on the old radius, I don't know what you call it, the radius, whatever you would call it. And I'm excited to have this conversation because we've seen a lot of things come and go in tech, things like cloud, for example, and it just then becomes part of our everyday. I personally think AI is a little bit different this time around, and I can't wait to have this conversation with Aaron. So Aaron, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself?
Yeah, pleasure. Thank you so much, Marie. You also left off of your bio or redacted that you make some great steak seasoning too. I've been using that Marie's sexy salt on my steak, and I love it. So I think you should add another bullet point on there. It looked like you had room.
All right. You know what? That's a great point. Please message me after the session or in the chat.
Yeah, I hooked you up. Now you're going to have to mail some out to folks.
I'm going to have to mail out.
That should be our call to action. Yeah, if you want more information and steak salt, then hit us up.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
So Aaron Rosenberg here, CEO and partner of Oasis Solutions. Been helping businesses select, implement, and support their core business applications around their ERP or enterprise resource planning technology at Oasis for a little over 9 years. Lead our team here, spearhead our partnerships, both with our clients and with our partners. I've been working with Marie and her team on helping to communicate more effectively to the broader community out there the value of what a upgrade and a new ERP solution, or moving from QuickBooks and spreadsheets to something more modern, can do to improve the efficiencies in their business. And really excited as well to talk about what I've learned around AI within those business applications, what we're doing in our business to make sure that we're good stewards of AI technology, what we're also encouraging and looking at from our vendor perspective on what they're providing as far as AI roadmap, and all of the above. So I agree. I think AI is the most revolutionary technology that we will see since the internet. So as big as the internet has been for business and for personal communication, I think that's where AI is on the precipice. So hopefully not overselling that, but it is going to revolutionize the way we work, communicate, and do just about everything.
I'm gonna take it back even a couple more years. I'm gonna say since the fax machine. I think it's a pretty big deal. And as I said, I've been in the tech sector for over 30 years. So I've seen a lot of things come and go. And even the photocopier. We're going to jump into something right now and talk a little bit about what you're probably hearing out there. And I have to admit, AI is moving really, really, really fast. And it's moving faster than I would like as a business executive. It's hard to get your hands around what you should be paying attention to and what maybe doesn't matter. And so a lot of companies, particularly ones building AI software and people building solutions around AI, are trying to implement AI because they want to enhance efficiency and productivity. They want to do more with less people, and they want to save money. Now, Aaron, let me ask you a question. Have you ever heard this promise about tech in the past?
Yeah, is it going to do more with less, right? Is it going to save you time and money? Of course, yes.
And so I kind of joke about this, and I've been traveling all over North America over the last couple of months, talking to people about responsible AI in particular. And I make the joke and I say, I was around when email was first introduced into the workplace. And we got told that email was going to enhance efficiency and productivity. It was going to allow us to get things out the door faster, do more, save us money. And, the reality of email, as an example, is that it kind of made our lives more complicated. It made us always on 24/7. And we ended up having to just keep doing more and more and more and more and more. So I've been talking to people saying, we've heard this promise before. What makes it different this time? So I want to jump into a couple of key areas that I think are things you're going to have to really pay attention to. Because the one thing about AI and why it's so important to be working with a technology partner like Oasis, if you're doing ERP or CRM, is that nobody's really holding us accountable right now. We're moving pretty fast. Policies are having a hard time catching up. I remember when social media became a big thing corporately, and we had policies in place around social media. But I think now more than ever, the complexity of AI and what AI is doing means that we have to deploy technology responsibly. And that's why we need experts like Oasis to do this. Now, many people on the call today, and I'm going to take a look in a minute, and please, from a housekeeping perspective, if you have any questions, please put them in the chat. We'd love to answer your questions. We love to engage the audience in these conversations. What I think is interesting about right here, right now, is that in your own organizations, for those people on the call with us today and taking part in the webinar, your people in your organization are probably using AI, and you may or may not even know it. They may have started to use a free version of ChatGPT. They might have started to bring other tools in. And so the message we want to get across today is how we can use AI responsibly and what we need to be putting up our hand and making clear to our companies and to our management teams around what we need to be aware of when it comes to AI. So, excuse me, today we want to get through 5 best practices that we're seeing in AI implementation, and we want to raise awareness and raise the bar around how you might be doing this in your organization. So the first is transparency and communication. In the marketing teams, and that's a lot of times where I end up working in sales and marketing teams, the sales and marketing folks have always had a real push on to grab tools and technology that's going to make their jobs easier. And one of the things we're seeing right now, and it doesn't matter if you are using Google for your Office solution, whether you're using Office 365, you're starting to see AI getting integrated into that. And for sales teams in particular, the efficiencies that you can gain by recording meetings and putting notes back into the emails after you're doing follow-up on a meeting, it's very cool. And I don't know if anybody on the call today has joined a sales call in the last little while and might have noticed a tool that automatically starts running. So when we all moved online in a pandemic world, I remember people would say, okay, I'm going to record this, and they'd ask permission. And now what's happening with some of these AI tools is that we're not even getting asked permission when we're recording conversations or recording meetings.
Right.
So while that efficiency is amazing, it's the transparency and communication that becomes so important. And I don't know whether you've seen this happening with a lot of organizations, Aaron, but for me, we have to start being more transparent about how we're using it, when we're using it, and how it's going to be used. And one of the things we've done at Marketing Copilot, we're a member of the AI, Responsible AI Institute, and we went there to look for templates on policy and governance. And even though we're a really small business, we still wanted to put a policy out for our employees and for our clients to say, this is how we're using it. So the first thing I want to dig into right now is transparency and communication. you really need to be communicating how your organization is using AI. And if you happen to be, again, I'll use the sales and marketing team. If you happen to be bringing in a tool, I think you have an obligation to tell your organization you're using that tool. You want to talk about how it might impact data within your organization or how it might impact your customers. And you want to develop an AI usage plan for both internal and external processes. Do you want to add anything to that, Aaron? Is there other things you're seeing around this particular topic?
No, I think what we did is similar to what your experience was, and we set out to look for and develop an AI charter, which talks about responsible usage, which talks to the trust but verify necessity within AI tools. So I want people to use tools to become more effective because I want to do more with less and save time and money in my organization and make my people as effective as possible. We also have been using Zoom largely for teleconferencing, and it has a very robust AI generative summary, which is fantastic, like you said, and so good for note taking and for being able to allow the salesperson to really listen, which is probably the key ingredient to a good salesperson. And also to be a good leader, you have to be a good listener. Where when you're trying to take notes, sometimes you can miss some stuff. But important, I think, to your question here is it's not a copy and paste. Like, don't just copy and paste that and forward it on. Check it to ensure it's not missed something important or miscommunicated something, because context is really critical too.
Absolutely. And I know that as part of our AA policy, we've said, for example, that we use AI for research, but we would never use it to generate original content. We would use it, and we're still fact checking AI, because a lot of times AI isn't necessarily grabbing correct information and data. I know a lot of customers now that we speak with and people that we speak with in the user community are also adopting it on the customer service side. And the worst thing you could do for your brand and for your company is to use AI to generate something, not check it, and send it to a customer and find out the information you sent was wrong or the steps weren't correct. This is where we have a lot of AI gotchas. And some people are just grabbing tools now and trying to start using them in their organization. And they also don't know where it's grabbing information from and whether or not there's information being grabbed that should be private and shouldn't be available. And I think that's something that a lot of people are seeing. So that segues beautifully into the next point here about data security and privacy. And as we have been working with technology providers like yourself, Aaron, what we see is a very clear roadmap being built for organizations that talks about public information and private information. Now, an ERP or a CRM system, in my mind, are the backbone that an organization runs on. And it's the most important information in your organization, what you're storing in your ERP or what you're storing in a CRM. Take a minute right now and explain what you're talking to customers about with respect to data security and privacy.
Yeah, so data security, privacy, table stakes in today's ERP, CRM, right, business application spectrum. And so we have a couple of different things that we talk about with data security and privacy in relation to where the data is stored, who has access to the data. And in most of our next generation, well, all of our next generation ERPs, that's all in tier 1 data centers that have physical penetration tests. They have armed guards and security personnel, just as you would expect your banking data to be held at. And then when you actually get into the app to access that data, there's going to be a multitude of options for two-factor authentication, for example, to ensure that you're on an approved device and you have authenticated that's actually you. Then in your user role and permission setting too, how you would actually get to any of the data that you could read, write, or edit is set up and configured by an administrator. And we're seeing that through approval levels for different workflows and things like that too. One of the things that I've seen in our personal productivity tools, I'll take Copilot, for example, which is the name of the Microsoft Outlook tool, and you might speak to this a little bit more too, is they have firewalls around different data sets and data points, right? So it's not pulling in and putting anything that could be stored in your team's OneDrive that could be in an Excel format, maybe a comp plan or a benefit structure or salary information, right? Obviously, any kind of personal security protocols around social security numbers and banking routing numbers and things like that, that you can't take any of that and access any of that when you're building a proposal or a document with the AI Copilot tool today.
So I think there's two parts to this that people need to be aware of. And again, just even if you're an employee at an organization and you want to bring in some of these tools, it's really important to have a conversation about this, because there's the public tools, the public data lakes, the public places where data is getting pulled to run AI. And your reference to Copilot, Aaron, is interesting, because that would be one that would sit within your organization, pulling data from in your organization. So there's the public tools and the private tools. And sometimes those public tools, that content finds its way into your organization. So that's where you have to be really careful that you're pulling in. For example, in HR, somebody could start to pull in salary data around a particular job description and pull that in and find out that you're either seriously overpaying or underpaying. Like you have to be careful about the types of information that's coming in. So some of the best practices that we tell people are really important is, if you don't have a cybersecurity provider who's able to help you implement organization-wide AI tools, you should really get one. And the reason that that's so important is things are changing really quickly. And just suddenly adding, for example, if you do use Outlook or Microsoft Office, any of those things, and you just decide to upgrade to Copilot, and it's suddenly going to be there next to your email client and those kinds of places, there needs to be a clear understanding of where the information goes. You should only be collecting and using data that is necessary for the tool to function. And you want to, as you've already mentioned, and I'm just, sort of recapping, I think what Aaron's already communicated, you want to avoid unnecessary personal and sensitive information. And, the thing that is really interesting to me, and again, because I've been in the tech sector for so long, there was a time when you could create silos around different departments and say, well, I'm in marketing and this doesn't matter to me. Or I'm in HR and this doesn't matter to me. Or I'm in IT and I'm the only one who's responsible for this. Everybody in your organization today needs to be trained on data security best practices. It is so vital and so important to our organizations that we can't just leave it to the IT department. It's not fair and it's too complicated. And we need to be on top of this as we're looking in our roles in an organization to see how we're using information, where we're collecting information. And I know as a marketing team within our own group at Marketing Copilot, there was a time where, IT technology, knowing how to run things was maybe a 10th of our job. Now I would say it's close to 75%. And everybody has to be aware of these issues, regardless of the role they play in the organization. And I think that's why leadership around this subject is so important. The next one that I want to address, and this is one that is very, very near and dear to my heart, is addressing data and algorithm bias. Now, I've had lots of very heated conversations with technologists in the last 12 months, and particularly as I've gone out to speak to people at different organizations like Microsoft, and saying, there's some pretty serious bias in some of this data that we're receiving. And for example, people have been concerned about AI for a while, saying that if we weren't collecting the right information, by the time we went to run AI tools against it, it's going to be spitting out the wrong information. They've tried to argue with me and say, well, you can't manage the data within the data lake that AI is pulling from. So if, for example, we're talking about ChatGPT, which is a publicly available tool, or OpenAI, it has data structure that you can't get in there and say, I'm going to adjust this. So you have to be very careful when you pull the information back. And the reason that's so important within your own organization is, if you decide to run an AI tool on some of the data that you have as an organization for building a new product, or deciding who the next target market is you want to go after. I've worked with enough organizations, and I'm sure you can speak to this as well, Aaron, that in your CRM, for example, there's a lot of data missing. So when you go to run AI tools on it, you suddenly realize it's giving me back something that is really not what I should be paying attention to. So talk a little bit about how you help people manage their data in either their ERP or their CRM. What should they be aware of if they're going to start to add an AI tool to that?
Yeah, certainly. And CRM has always been a very difficult application to implement, because the information and input is all dependent on what's between the chair and the keyboard in a big sense, right? You may get some incoming leads from the website that can integrate in, and maybe even you have an AI chatbot that's starting conversations and passing those over. So those are inputs that are managed and self-governed by, right, your application. But once it gets to someone actually inputting these notes that we're talking about, referring back to earlier in our Zoom transcriptions, or where the deal cycle is, or if they've gotten budget authority, need, timeline, qualifications, etc., it's all garbage in, garbage out in the CRM. And in the accounting department, it's very different, right? There are debits, there are credits, there are invoices, there are purchase orders. That stuff isn't dependent on someone's perception or subjective nature of how they heard the conversation or what they think the deal is worth. So in the ERP system for AI, where we have seen a lot of enhancements, and frankly, over the last decade, I mean, some of this is almost table stakes now, is in your payables, right? So for AP automation, for example, if you still have people or a person opening a mailed invoice from a vendor, taking the time to go into the system or systems in some regards and match purchase order, vendor, invoice, amount, all keying that information into the system. Hopefully they're keying it and they're not writing it down somewhere, right? Then that's something that AI has been addressing, again, for 10 years. It's not a brand new ChatGPT, write me a bedtime story for my daughter type of technology. It's something that you have available and accessible to automatically scan an invoice through an email address, put in and match that information. And then basically what we're telling our customers is all you need is somebody that part of their job is as a traffic cop, right? Looking and saying, okay, how much do I want to pay? How do I want to pay? When do I want to pay? But not doing all the manual work that's there too.
Yeah, and I think that's a great point. I think there is a difference between, and I've seen so many CRMs that, for example, that are so poorly populated because nobody wants to take the time to put the information in. But when you're running your accounts and your book of record, for example, you don't have the same luxury. It's very specific and detailed go in. So I think ERP as an example is a great place where you should start as an organization. So some of the best practices we've been seeing, educate yourself on where and how existing biases are present. So if it's not straight numbers that you're pulling data or trying to grab dashboards or trying to report on something, figure out, did somebody actually put in the information from the last meeting, or, is the person's personal record there in the HR team? you should probably implement a dedicated team to ensure the new tools are implemented and used correctly. I think it's important for somebody to have some governance over this within an organization. And you want to continuously evaluate and assess the tools for bias, whether past history is good, whether there's potential risks in the data that you might be pulling, whether it's public data or corporate data. These are some of the things, and these are some of the gotchas that you're going to want to look for. If we get to best practice number 4, this is the one that I love, is measuring success and ROI. How are you actually going to see, and I've been reading a pile of white papers out there that tech companies have been putting out. They've actually been able to measure a number that bubbles to the top of my head as an example is Microsoft's 37%. Microsoft is claiming that Copilot will save you 37% of time or efficiency on a daily basis. So if you think that an average workday is 8 hours and it's going to save you 37%, that's just over 3 hours that you're going to get back if it's actually doing that. So that sounds pretty cool. But let's be honest, if you have an extra 3 hours in your day, your employer is likely going to say, well, you're going to fill it up doing something else, or we're going to combine roles, or we're going to do whatever. So I think really being honest about this, about where's the success and where's the ROI. We've talked about the CRM and the success being that I don't want to take meeting notes. I don't want to have to be populating all these fields in the CRM. If there's a way to do that very easily that saves me time so I can be out meeting people face to face or talking to clients and customers, I think that's a big win. On the ERP side, where do you think some of the wins are going to be, Aaron? And where should people be trying to measure success on the ERP side?
Yeah, great question. So talked in depth about that side of the invoice automation and capture. The same thing can be said on the AR portion of your business. Right? Being able to send out notices, transact with customers in a way that they want to transact and when they want to transact, offering maybe more lenient terms or more aggressive terms based on different types of increases or decreases in the amount of payment, passing on potential costs associated with credit card purchases, for example, and merchant transaction fees, or encouraging more wire transfers or ACH, right, within your business too, on both sides of the ledger. With customers that have product distribution or sell product online, there are efficiencies that we've seen really ramp up in item recognition and item suggestion. You've been experiencing that again. An AI bot has been in your Amazon account for many years, offering you suggested items. That's something, again, that I feel like is table stakes for anybody that has multiple products on a retail store, whether that's in store or online. And if you have a retail store and you don't have an online presence, then you're doing something wrong there too. And if you're a product distributor with multiple warehouses or strategic distribution centers across the country or across the world, you want to use that data and aggregate it to inform you of how you can save money and time and improve customer experience on shipping. Which item should you pull from which DC in order to get that to the customer at the point that they need it as quickly as possible and as inexpensive for you and them as possible too. So there's just a couple of things that we're seeing out there that have, again, been helping businesses, and none of this happened in the last 6 months, right? This is all, again, kind of table stakes with next generation ERP. And so I'm really excited to see where it goes from there.
Okay. So, again, I think some of these best practices that we're talking about today are even repetitive for what you might have heard in the past when you were starting to do things without AI. Set clear metrics and goals to measure success in implementations. Monitor usage to ensure that it's in line with your business goals. And again, keep that line of communications open with your clients for feedback on whether it's working. One of the things that a lot of people complain about in the business world with respect to technology is all around reporting and dashboards. And I do think one of the places where AI is going to have a huge impact is helping us build better reports and dashboards without having to go back to our technology team and ask for it. And I think any product you're using right now on the ERP side, if it doesn't have the capability of being able to help you do those kinds of things, as you pointed out, table stakes, if it doesn't have the opportunity to help you build those things quickly, you probably should get that fixed first and foremost, because the data is usually there. It's how we parse it, how we put it together, how we report on it, when we report on it. And yes, it does take a human being to go in and understand it and figure out what it's telling us, but it shouldn't be an owner's job to have to get your reports and dashboards built. That should be something that should come naturally. The last one we want to talk about is continuous monitoring and improvement. And, just like with anything you put in, there is no such thing anymore. And I don't know if you'd agree with me on this one, Aaron, but there's no such thing anymore as a set it and forget it. We've been building websites for 20 years. And, so many of our clients, when we build a website, as an example, say, okay, it's done. Now I don't have to do it again for 5 years. And guess what? That's not the way it works if you want something to perform really well. So just like other tools that we've used in the past, like building a website, like, launching our first version of an ERP, we want to be able to do continuous monitoring improvement. And I'm just going to jump in here to the best practices and ask you to comment on your favorite one here, Aaron. Which one makes sense to you? We have to be continually looking for ways to do better. We have to make sure systems are up to date. For example, you and I could name a couple of ERPs out there today that have been around for over 25 years. They're still client server installs, and they're not particularly helpful for a business. And as difficult as it might be to move off that particular system, you're not going to be able to take advantage of a lot of new things if you're not keeping things up to date and working correctly. And I don't just mean running updates on a system. It's really about where can we enhance productivity. You want to make sure your usage is aligned around ethical standards and your AI usage policies, and you have to be able to understand the current capabilities of the platforms and understand where you can add it. From your perspective, what's your favorite one here, Aaron?
So I will take star number 2 for 100, Alex. The
okay, beautiful.
Need to be up to date. They need to be working to the best of their abilities. And again, if your current system was not developed during the age of the internet, we're talking about pre-internet systems, then it is likely that your system requires a lot of manual effort to upgrade and update to the latest version, or you are on a version that is 1, 2, 3, 5, 10 years behind the latest technology. So I think when we're looking at and encouraging our customers to consider their cloud strategy and now their AI strategy, you have to have a system that lives in a data structure that AI can access. If your data is closed off with a moat around it and it's blinking in your closet, okay, that's the main, it's only going to pull from your data. It cannot learn and create suggestions, best practices, and helpful intuitive information for business growth by consuming and accessing tens of thousands of customers' data at the same time, right? And again, with a provider that needs to be able to do that in a secure manner. So we're not talking about, sharing your individual business operations with others, but to say, okay, out of our 10,000 customers, these 5,000 that are performing excellently do these best practices, and learning from all of that data needs to be accessible. And so that really only happens when you have a multi-tenancy data structure and a cloud-based infrastructure, right, that can be accessed and updated automatically as well to push out the new functions without having to wait multiple years for a painful upgrade to occur.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. For those of people on the call today, don't forget, we'd love to hear your feedback and your questions if you have any. And if you want to snap this QR code with your cell phone, this is Marketing Copilot's Guide to Responsible AI. And we're happy to share it with you today. And you can bring it back to your organization to talk about some of the things we've talked about. But the 4 pillars of responsible AI that we like to focus on are your intellectual property, data security, algorithm bias, and of course, brand ethics, how you're using this. I got caught in a loop this week on a chat box, and it just kept going around and round and round and not answering my question. And I can't think of anything that erodes brand trust more than getting caught in a loop. So if you are going to use AI and you are going to use some of these AI-driven chat bots, monitor them. Make sure they're working properly for customers, because I'll tell you, people are going to have less and less patience and tolerance for brands that deploy AI and don't do it properly. So I think we've put this guide together. We put it together at the beginning of the year. It'll probably change again at the end of the year because it's moving so quickly. You could probably update this every month because there's something new to add. But these are definitely the 4 pillars that we think are most important right now. And as I mentioned, we've put out a policy around how we use AI from a marketing perspective. I also want to take a minute and let you know that Oasis is just absolutely amazing at walking people through different demos of products, but not just demos, getting down to the nut of what's going on in your environment right now, where your ERP, as an example, might not be meeting the standards that you have in your organization. So I really encourage you to book a call with Christian at Oasis. Snap that QR code and you can get right onto his calendar and book a call with him if you want to talk about any of these things or talk about how your ERP is functioning right now. So these are the public service announcements, parts of the webinar today. But please do connect, because I think Oasis is a group of really smart people who've been able to help people get that book of record, that accounting system, that all those connections that have to happen for your business to function smoothly. They know what they're doing. They've been at it for a while. So again, I encourage anybody who's on the call today to send us a question. Our moderator for today, Maddie, has just put the book a call link, and definitely the download if you want to grab it. We're available for questions, but what are your closing thoughts, Aaron? What would you tell somebody who came to you and said, I want to put AI in my organization? What would you say?
I would say absolutely you have to, but you also need to download Marie's guide to best practices of how to do that, right? And get a consult on internal and external experts. You know, we put together, and we're a smaller organization, around 50 people, and we have a AI charter that we developed. I thought maybe we asked ChatGPT to develop an AI charter, but I was informed that was not correct. That would be too dangerous. We should do it ourselves and then see if we can verify it. But we have like a small subcommittee, which I think is a good place to start, right? Of people that are passionate about the subject and that want to help their team members and their organization thrive. And I do think it's a super powerful tool, again, a revolutionary tool. But I would probably start with establishing a subcommittee and your goal being to put together a charter. You can use your resources like us as external resources. Maybe your managed service provider would be a good person as well to get you started. They might have a good template out there, and then to make it your own.
Yeah, absolutely. So when people talk to me about it, the thing I say is I've seen lots of trends in technology come and go. This one's here to stay, and it is revolutionary. This isn't just an evolution. This is a revolution. But I think we can do better this time around. I was part of the email marketing world, the social media world, the website world, the internet world, the email world, all the different things that we've seen happen in technology. This one has the ability to completely change industries and sectors and really change the way we're doing work. I think it's great. It's just we can do better this time around in how we introduce it to the market. And as technology leaders, I think it's our job to get out there and tell people, be responsible about how you deploy AI. So I'm really glad we got to have this conversation today, Aaron. And thanks to everybody who's been on the call. Again, you can reach out to either Aaron or myself on LinkedIn, through email. And if you have any questions, please feel free to ask. If you want us to connect you to people in the industry that you might want to learn more about, we can do that as well. And it's been a great conversation. Thanks, everyone, for joining us today.
Yeah, thank you, everyone. Thank you, Marie. Appreciate it.
Wonderful. Take care and have a great AI day.